Like he uses spirit discernment to have a woman that can protect him in the spiritual realm, because regardless, she was always protecting him.
The head vampire, he used a lot of the family members, and you're gonna have times where they're gonna be like, oh, why don't she come back to church? That's
Yeah.
symbolic to what's happening in the movies when they're using the brother, but this is symbolic to how your family influences you to come back to the matrix.
I heard this quote that the woman will protect you in the spiritual realm. I know we had a conversation when I say, like, when a woman's having her period, you will sit with that woman and pray with that woman, meditate with that woman, because that woman is powerful. We're powerful in the spirit.
The moon in itself is a draconian mothership. A woman's cycle operates on a 28-day cycle. So this is why women get periods, because it's pulling on their energy. It's stealing energy from the woman. It's stealing energy from the divine feminine. That's why the planet is off balance. That's why the scales of justice, the cosmic scales of justice on the planet is unbalanced. But
Asian lady, she started to spaz out like, nah, forget it, come right now, right now. And then what happened? The guy who was the leader, he looked surprised, like, oh man, there we go. The moment we was waiting for. They was waiting for that aggression, for the energy to lower, the frequency to lower in that building, so that they can just push the doors wide open. What happened that let them come in when they couldn't come in the first time? They weren't allowed in. The frequency changed.
All right, y'all, we are now back. We got ourselves Bdell1014, Maat Mystic, Yvng Gahd. In this video, we're going to be talking about Sinners. All right, that movie is an amazing movie. When it came out, it was a lot of, people talking about it. It kind of reminded me of Get Out, just to seeing how much of a thriller it is. And this is the disclaimer. If you have not seen that movie, do not watch this video, okay? Watch that movie before you watch this video. We're gonna go in all the Easter eggs, the spiritual meanings of that movie, because that movie is a very, very spiritual, woke movie. What do you think the word sinners mean in the movie?
I feel sinners mean that, how we are born sinners. That's the Christianity mentality. Everyone's born sinners. I feel that sinners mean like you're born with that lower nature. You just have to overcome the lower nature.
I say, as far as you be, what do you feel like sinners means?
well, the symbology behind sinners is correlated to the lunar cycle, because the Babylonians, they used to call the moon sin. So when you're born in sin, that means you're born into the material plane. So that's why, the great majority of the monotheistic religious systems, they all operate on a Sabbath, meaning that it's a lunar doctrine, because the lunar doctrine propagates the sleep spell of King Gud. So if you notice in the movie, when they got bit, that's when they was under the silver key, which is the sleep spell. So all this is Freemasonic symbolism in it as well.
Yvng Gahd, what do you feel like sinners means?
Man, personally, I felt like sinners in this particular movie was anyone who stood outside of the Christian mindset, the Christian way of life, and who wanted to go and basically be themselves and practice magic and dance and blues and rhythm, and basically have so much different characteristics and different styles of culture that we had inside of that particular building. I feel like a sinner would have been anyone that stood outside of their frequency that they wanted to be on the lower vibration of being outside. It was kind of flipped. It was weird to me how they flipped that word. But yeah, that's how I look at
it. Okay. Yeah, so I want to ask you, Mystic, you was telling me basically one good part about the Hoodoo lady. You were saying that the Hoodoo lady, when she died, that the demons, the reason why they were scared, the vampires, the reason that they were scared was because of something. Can you go into depth about that?
So the reason that the vampires were scared, because they wanted to convert her over into the dark side. You see how when he bit somebody, he took their memories, their gifts, their talents. If she would have been converted, they probably would have won,
Mm,
because she was honestly the spiritual protector or the spiritual guide for Preacher Boy. So she
mm-hmm.
was protect him spiritually. And so when she died, she crossed over, because you would rather free your soul than go into a corrupt world. So when she died, that freed her soul, and now she's more powerful. Well, I wouldn't say more powerful, but now she's seeing what's going on, and she can guide in the spiritual realm. She didn't convert over.
So she was like, basically, she was in the spiritual realm now, protecting the rest of the people,
Exactly.
and
Yes,
that's why
because
they
she's
was running.
the great mother. Like, she to me in the film, she represents the great mama.
Hmm. Wow, you was also telling me another part, Mystic, that when you have the you have Slim and you have Slack, right? The red and blue,
Hmm.
and you were saying that the one with the blue, the reason why he chose the Hoodoo lady was because he was tapped in more than Red Dude, because Red Dude, he was more tapped
Because
into his root chakra.
yes, because the blue, he was on a spiritual path. So she was his guide as well.
You come in, Bdell. So when it comes to the blue part and the red part, which will be, I believe that's, what is it, Slim and Slack?
No, you talking about the brothers, right?
Yeah. What was the name? Slim and Slack,
That's
right?
according to that's Freemasonic symbolism,
Yeah.
talking about Jack and Boys, which is the embodiment of the silver key and the golden key, the sun and the moon. So that's what it was representing, the dualistic pillars of the
Okay.
brothers. So, but one of the brothers, he was connected to the witch, because all throughout ancient times, we all know that no matter how many women the king or the emperor he had, the one he fucked with the most was the witch, because she was the healer. So that's why she made him the mojo bag, which is a form of protection. Because a mojo bag, when you get into the Orishas, when you study the word Orisha, the prefix and the suffix, it means ruler of the ethers, or the rulers of or the master of the ethers. So the mojo bag was the embodiment of a dodecahedron, which is the fifth element, the quintessential alchemical element that embodies all things of nature. So it was basically a protectorate. So that mojo bag is what created that energetic morphic field around him, that spiritual protection, to where he can operate by way of psychic self-defense. You also look in the movie, in the beginning parts, they had a bombarder beetle. A bombarder beetle, they can do psychic self-defense by way of their genetic format. They have the ability to shoot out ectoplasm to protect their force field. So this is where low vibrational insects can't feed on their life force. So the same thing was actually translated in the movie. So that's telling you the correspondence on nature. You got parasitic entities, in the animal kingdom. You got parasitical entities when you're talking about people who was operating from their root chakra. Because when you understand these apparitions, these entities, draconians or whatever, if you're vibrating from the green chakra on down, you food for the gods. They're able to feed on your life force. So it was basically just demonstrating, the embodiment of spiritual protection and how it's correlated with ether and things of that nature. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay. All right. Yeah. So Mystic. Yeah. So we wanted to ask you, when it comes to that last part we were talking about, when it comes to the red and blue, symbolically, what did that mean to you?
To me, it meant like the blue, he was on a spiritual path. So he, that's why he went to the great mother, or the lady that was the witch, because like he said, she was protecting him even with the mojo bag. At towards the end, when he was about to get bitten by the vampire, that
Mm-hmm.
mojo bag kicked in and repelled the vampire. So
Mm.
he knew what he was doing. And if you compare it to his brother was really lustful, messing with a married woman that, like, just, it's just, he was messing with a denatured woman. I don't like to bring in, race or anything, but she was married, and it's like he had a chance to let go of that animalistic nature lust. But he fell into that lust and he became a sacrifice. So red represents to me like blood sacrifice. The blue, you can either sacrifice your ego and become enlightened. That's pretty much what the brother that was in the blue, that's what happened to him when he died. He did become a sacrifice, but he became enlightened at the same time. And then the brother that was in his lower animalistic nature, he became a monster, because if you can't sacrifice your ego, you can't
Mm-hmm.
elevate your mental, you can't reach higher consciousness,
Mm-hmm.
God consciousness. He became a vampire, which they all had the same consciousness. As you can see, like if you look at people, like you said, in parasites, even the parasites in your body, they're all vibrating at a low consciousness, but they all like have the same consciousness. Like if you talk to a parasite person and then you see a dog, they have that same consciousness compared to somebody that's vibrating on God consciousness. So
Yes.
that's
Yeah, I'm gonna let you go, Young God. After one thing I've noticed as well was with the what was it, the woman wearing red, when he was going, and he died from the vampire lady. That was the most interesting part because symbolically it represented that he was in his root chakra, and that's why he was wearing red. So he was stuck in his root chakra, and that's what really you know got him killed. You know what I'm saying? When you're stuck in your root chakra and you're overly sexual, you can't use your discernment no more. So that's one thing I noticed. His discernment was gone, and if you have the spiritual eyes and you can balance out your root chakra and you can go up to your heart, your third eye, your crown, you can see and you can feel and you can intuitively know, okay, something's off about this, about Mary. Her name was Mary too, the one, the lady, the white lady. So he couldn't really use his discernment was because he was stuck in his root chakra. So, young guy, what do you feel about that scenario?
Most def. I actually agree with both perspectives. Actually, all of y'all perspectives. Actually, being able to listen to all of y'all. Actually, y'all explained a lot of what I felt. I did feel like it had a lot to do with the twin pillar energy.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I relate to also it having a lot to do with symbolizing red, white, and blue. Because if you notice the guy in the back, he didn't have on white necessarily, but it was like a brownish, tannish white, when he was inside of that vehicle. To me, it represented the red, white, and blue. And to me, that entire movie, when I want to think about it on a certain perspective, it reminds me of America and what America did, coming into our cultural events that we built, similar situations like Black Wall Street and things like that. It reminds me a lot of how we built things like that and how they came in with their vampire nature and tried to come in and suck and drain from that. So when I seen red, white, and blue a lot, it reminded me a lot of what was that movie called? Leave the World Behind.
Mm-hmm.
That one began with a lot of red, white, and blue symbolism as well. So, and they were, I believe, written by the same person or they had some kind of similarity. So, I basically started out seeing it the same exact way. It's like the red, white, and blue, the United States, and when that Indian I forgot exactly what tribe he came from, the native tribe. He came and popped off the movie trying to tell that Caucasian family not to let the
Yeah. What did
vampires.
that mean?
So to me, that symbolized the Native American trying to come and save them from letting that. I don't know. Somehow they tried to stop them from allowing that vampire nature to get instilled into their image of, I guess, the Caucasian culture. Because once that energy got instilled into them, they were the same family that was outside of that empire and went in there to get it burnt down and to get it destroyed, and the Asian lady popped off the fire and that's why it burnt down. It's a lot, I don't want to cover it all that quick,
Wow.
man.
As far as you be there, what did you feel like? Do you have anything on that? That was one part I didn't understand. Why didn't the Aboriginal people come back to save? I know they had to go because it was dark, but why did they? Would you think they was onto something?
They already knew what time it was because they understood the infiltration process. When you get to the inception of history, and when you're talking about the 18th dynasty of ancient Kemet, the Hyksos dynasty, they infiltrated and they was cursed with leprosy. So this is why you got to read this book called Blue Eyed Beast.
Mm.
They infiltrated. One thing you got to understand about leprosy is a vampiric disease. It talks about that in the book of Leviticus in the Bible, the book of Numbers, the book of Romans, because those were all law books. They were uncivilized because they was practicing cannibalism during the 18th dynasty when they got infiltrated. Ancient Kemet did. That's when Satanism was introduced, because cannibalism is correlated with the Canaanite. The Canaanite is the cursed seed of the Bible, which you call the Gentile. So when you get to the inception of the European history or whatever, that's a part of their practice. They practice cannibalism, so they're vampiric by nature. See, one thing you got to understand about the great majority of Black people on this planet, we get our energy and our power from the sun. They get their energy and their power from blood.
Mm.
So when you go to the Victorian era, they had the Egyptian mummy craze. They was eating so many damn Egyptians by way of fermentation that they became extinct, right? You got to read another book called the Delectable Negro. They eat us because they thought it was going to enhance their genetics. This is why you're seeing so many white women right now, they getting melanin shots or whatever, because they're not connected to source. So that's what it was all about. It was talking about the infiltration process. So that lets you know we ain't supposed to be letting outsiders inside of our culture.
Facts.
Because if everything is unnatural, has a parasitical energy. And if you have a parasitical energy, that means you're gonna leech on to the original.
Wow.
Big facts. Hey, can I add in real quick something?
Yeah.
I really think it was interesting how they related the Christian culture to this entire situation. Did you realize at the end when they was baptizing Sammy, and they were speaking like Bible scriptures to this man,
Mm-hmm.
as they were baptizing him into this river constantly and trying to brainwashing him into submissive so that he can come and absorb Sammy's energy, because somehow he was going to use his energy to catapult their culture of vampirism to another level, and that's why he needed Sammy. So it's very wild how they related the church to the vampires who came into the culture and basically burned it down.
I gotta point that in too. And I wrote down that on my notes that the head vampire, he was symbolized as a preacher, and that was symbology of a false prophet. And it's kind of showing you how a false prophet isn't gonna look evil. They're gonna always seem like a false, they're gonna seem like a preacher. And it's kind of symbolizing, there's a lot of false prophets, but they have evil, because they could have made the head vampire anybody. They could have made him a doctor. They could have made him anybody, but they made him a preacher. He had like this preacher archetype, and they kind of showing you how like he was so knowledgeable on talking, but he couldn't see his own sins. He couldn't see what he was doing wrong. And it's kind of showing you how like there's preachers and there's false prophets within, this religion, communities, that they do so much teaching and preaching, but they have so much sins inside them and they can't even see what they're doing wrong. So it's kind of showing like, like he was a false prophet. That's literally what he was, because he was always trying to convince the vampires, the people, to become a vampire. This is your salvation. This is your freedom. You can do this. You can do that. That's a false.
Yeah,
what do you got to add on to that, Bdell?
He was a pastor.
No, I said, what do you got to add on to that about the false prophet? Is that something that you've seen?
Yeah, just the propagation of religion.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? They're just showing you how religion in itself is a parasitical nature. It's going to feed on your life force, right? So that's why it's imperative for our people to understand the inception of history to where we're able to divorce from the religious systems. Because you got to also watch the movie Vampire in Brooklyn. In the movie Vampire in Brooklyn, in the beginning of the movie, they show you the format on how the Canaanite Draconian, who are vampiric, they was kicked out of Egypt and they was exiled. They was kicked out of Europe, and then that's when you go through the Freemasonic ritual when you got to walk across the burning sands blindfold with one pants leg up with a cable and toe. You got to walk across the burning sands blindfolded, and then that's when they was kicked out of Egypt, and then that's when they was exiled back into the Caucasus Mountains or whatever, because they were cannibals. So you got to understand their history in order to understand the whole what's taking place in the movie full spectrum. So that lets you know that, you know, everything that comes from their culture is synthetic. It's not natural to us. So yes, that's basically the embodiment of a false prophet.
Yeah,
because it all started with imperialism. Anything that starts with imperialism, anything that starts with colonization, you have to hide a history of a certain demographic of people.
And I also noticed that the head vampire, he was very convincing, very fluent, and even at times the main characters, they almost switch sides. He was getting the brother almost come to the vampire side. He was getting the Chinese lady. He was that convincing, and that's how, like, it's kind of symbolic of how, like, in the conscious community, religious communities, there's people who are really good at speaking and grabbing people, but sometimes these people don't have good intentions, and it shows you how, like, you got to always use your discernment on prophets, because we don't know if they're a false prophet, and they're very promising too. Like, he was very promising, like, oh, you're gonna be able to live forever, you're gonna be able to do this, to do that, and it's like, it's showing that there's a lot of evil behind religious authorities. That was like the main point I picked up. Like, the head vampire, him being symbolized as a preacher, they just, like, it was so much evil behind him, but he's also portraying this religious authority, and it's showing that there's a lot of good speakers, but, you know, someone who promises something is that, like, you'll notice that a lot with false prophets, like, they promise a lot of things, but there's really nothing on the other side when you get to that side. So he was here to show you that evil doesn't always look evil, you know, and he wasn't saving them, he was draining them. Like, that's when he was just draining them, and just like in reality, some people, they act holy, but they live off people's sins, struggles, and loyalty, and their blind loyalty. But I definitely seen that he was here to warn the viewers of spiritual manipulation, because that's what I seen. Like, I seen, like, constant spiritual manipulation. He kept using the words hope, salvation, to manipulate people into his fantasy, because he had, like, this fantasy that he was really playing on people's fantasies, is what I seen. And I feel like a major point in this movie was to show you guys that, you know, a lot of preachers are vampires. A lot of spiritual teachers that are false prophets, the one that's just has their own intentions, they're vampires, and that's why it's like a vampire movie. So just like vampires, they can't see their own reflection because, you know, they can't be in the sun and stuff. A lot of preachers can as well, and they can't see their own sins. They can't see evil inside themselves. And it kind of goes, if you astrologically tie this in, it goes into Sagittarius, which is the archetype of the teacher, the archetype of the preacher. Their weakness is that they are kind of self-righteous too. He had, like, that Sagittarius complex. On the negative side of Sagittarius, they're more self-righteous. They can't really see their flaws. They're like a know-it-all. He had like a know-it-all complex in it, to where he couldn't see his own sins. So yeah.
That's because belief in itself is spiritual death. Anytime you believe in something outside of yourself, that's going to connect the soul, encapsulate it inside the body, to where you don't cross over higher dimensions. Right? Because it's all correlated to mind activation, right? Because if your brain is at a low vibrational state, that's what's going to keep you here. You got to study the holonomic brain theory. It tells you that the brain is tether connected to the simulation. And what connects you to the simulation? Your emotions. So if you have an emotional connection to religion, your ass is going to stay here. That's a part of, because religion in itself is a soul trap. And if you notice, when they got bit in the movie, they lost their souls, right? Yeah. So because they, instead of drinking, you know, Kool-Aid, they drinking blood. They got caught up in the mix.
I also wanted to ask you, Bdell, so you were saying that we feed off the sun, right? Which is true. As you said, they feed off the blood. What about the moon? Is it true that you believe, like, they feed off the moon too? Or you feel like, because that's controversial.
The moon in itself is a draconian mothership. You got to also ask why the great majority of the patrilineal system of patriarchy is the embodiment of the moon. So patriarchy is what steals the energy from the matriarchy. A woman's cycle operates on a 28-day cycle. So this is why women get periods, because it's pulling on their energy. It's stealing energy from the woman. It's stealing energy from the divine feminine. That's why the planet is off balance. That's why the scales of justice, the cosmic scales of justice on the planet is unbalanced. But everything operates by way of Maat when you're going through a reset, right? So when it comes to that, you know, the moon in itself, when you get to the inception of history and you study Japanese folklore, they talk about how the dragon brought the moon over into our solar system, into the Earth zone, the Milky Way star constellation, right? Because like I said, the moon feeds on your emotions. It feeds on everything that's connected to third density because it's a part of the illusion.
Yeah.
Well,
I mean,
I did not know that. Like you explained it why, like, yeah, women getting their periods is because of what's going on with the moon. Okay, that makes sense.
The moon is a draconian if you want to look at it, because it's feeding on your energy. It's a parasite because the moon is the external hard drive of planet Earth. It's what controls the frequency and vibration of humans. You could say people be like, well, I charge my crystals in the moon and stuff like that. Yeah, that's cool, but you got to get to the inception of history. In the beginning of time, you had a 24,000 year purification period on the planet. We started with a sun cycle. It wasn't no moon cycle. When you go to Credo Mutwa, he tells you in Zulu mythology, there wasn't no moon in our star constellation, right? When you look at some of the hieroglyphics in certain cultures, there's no moon. We sun people, right? So that's why I said, you got to read this book, Blue Eyed Beast. Everything that lunar doctrine, it's a vampiric energy to it. It's a parasite.
So you don't recommend people charge their crystals in the moon?
No, I think you're supposed to do everything. Look, everything you're supposed to be doing is in the morning. Why you think you get morning wood?
It makes sense.
That's the time of manifestation. That's when you're supposed to be doing tantric sex. Because as far as like manifestation, you know, that's when you're able to tap into the ethers and raise up your kundalini energy to where you're able to pull in intelligence down from the magnetosphere, to where you're able to materialize whatever you're trying to manifest by way of the sex, right?
Wow.
Everything you're supposed to be doing in the sun. I don't know about that moon shit because we're not moon people, but that's why the planet is off balance now.
Yeah. As far as Mystic, you was telling me as well about the parasites. You were saying that parasites, they don't need oxygen, and you were saying even in our body, that's why parasites have a spiritual entity inside of them. Even in our body, that's why when you do parasite cleanses, because people think parasite cleanses are only physical, but they're very spiritual too. When you do a parasite cleanse, you're cleaning yourself of demons. So can you correlate and add on to that and how it correlates into the movie?
Yes. So from my studying, most parasites don't need oxygen, and oxygen is life. Everything that breathes, you are a living, breathing spiritual being. So if you don't need oxygen, of course, a demonic entity will attach itself to you because you don't need oxygen to survive. Even as a farmer, I make teas to grow my food. I have to keep stirring the water to create oxygen in that water. If not, it's parasites that get in the water that will kill the plants that don't require oxygen. Oxygen kills parasites. That's like even the herbs, or if you eat a lot of fruit that has a lot of parasites. That I mean not parasite. I'm sorry. I hope are you gonna edit this?
No, you good. You keep
Yeah,
going.
okay. I'm a mama, so so when you eat fruit, I got you, baby. When you eat fruit, that has a lot of oxygen in it, which helps get rid of parasites. That helps get rid of the parasites in your body. So in the movie, they're sucking the life out of the people. What's in your blood? You're full of oxygen. Your blood is, is full of oxygen. So they're sucking that life force out of the people, and then and then that person turns into a parasite because now they need life force to survive unless they die. And I was gonna add on to like I'm sorry.
Okay. Yeah, so yeah. Parasites, that's a big thing right there. You know, I didn't know that parasites didn't need oxygen. That shows how they're not even that shows how deep, how evil they are, and how they don't got a soul.
Yeah, because it's, if you look at it, like everything is duality. So you're it's always gonna be a parasite, and it's always gonna be something that's not a parasite. You know, like it's always going to be in this reality, and that's what in the movie, that's what it pretty much represented. Like it's always gonna be a parasite that's coming to suck somebody's life. But you see how the unconscious people, they pretty much got by the parasite because they didn't have spiritual discernment, and they wasn't I would say like they did not, like I said, spiritual discernment, and they was just more in their lower nature. That's why the redhead brother, he was able to get got, because even in the beginning of the movie, the blue hat brother told the preacher boy, I need you to watch out for him because he can't even watch his own back. That tells you something. He's not conscious. Like he's unconscious. He's always in the unconscious realm. And if you're always doing that, like people that just eat mindlessly anything and don't eat life, eventually you're gonna fall and become a vampire and start sucking people's life force. Like that's even today's time. Like people become vampires because they're not giving themselves oxygen, doing breathing exercise, eating oxygen food. You will eventually become a parasite because you don't have enough oxygen to go into your brain. And so
Yeah.
now you think that, okay, I need to, your mind plays tricks on you and say you doing something a certain way, but you're actually a vampire, a parasite. And
Hmm.
other people see you as a parasite. Maybe those vampires don't even realize they're vampires. They just
Hmm.
they probably think they're doing what they're supposed to be doing in the movie. Like they probably just thinking like, oh, this is what I'm supposed to be doing. But in reality, they're killing people, hurting people.
Mm.
But
Yeah.
yeah, that's
Wow.
yeah.
Yeah. Facts. Facts.
Yeah. It kind of like Stack, the red brother. He kind of gave off like this show off energy, like kind of like he's kind of superficial, a good bargainer, a good salesman, really good negotiator, but he gave off definitely more superficial vibes. And he's living a little bit more, just to show off. He kind of gave off those show off vibes. While Smoke, the blue brother, gave off a little bit more discernment, more spiritual discernment, because blue is the color of truth. So it did seem like he was more spiritual, more wiser, more on the truthful side. While
And
while
and
Stack, the red brother, yeah, was giving off more like, what you gonna say though?
I was just gonna say, because you can see he was using spiritual discernment, because when the cornbread came to the door trying to get in, he said, okay, just let me in. The blue head said, wait a minute, I don't feel like this don't feel right. It didn't feel right to him. And then his spiritual guide, which was the witch, the voodoo lady, saying,
Uh-huh.
wait a minute, like basically guiding him, saying, yeah, don't let him in. And he started questioning, asking questions like, you was going back and forth, coming in now. Why you can't come in now? What's the problem? What's the issue? He used his spiritual discernment, because I'm pretty sure if his other brother was right there, he probably would have let him in, and he probably would have killed everybody, because
Yeah.
he used the spiritual discernment. His spirit guide was behind him, which was his woman. You see what I'm saying? Like that feminine energy, that intuition. Like, no, something's not right.
That
So
lets you know right there that you in order to reach higher levels, higher states of consciousness, you need the woman.
mm,
You're
Mm.
not you're not going to get to the next level and be balanced unless you got the divine feminine energy. That's why in the movie Matrix, he wasn't able to leave until he had the divine feminine pulling him out of the Matrix system.
Yeah, it's a lot harder to tap in on your journey when you don't have a feminine
Perfect,
energy. Whether
perfect example,
yeah.
when you sports, you playing basketball, you hooping, it's none but dudes in the gym. But when the girls come in, you start to enhance a little bit. But okay, I'm about to show off a little bit. That divine feminine energy is going to put that battery in your back for you to keep going.
Mm.
She's
Hmm.
going to that fuel, that cosmic fuel to keep going, to keep elevating yourself.
Yeah.
Because that's why, that's why I've always been critical of people who are master teachers. If they didn't have a divine feminine, you somewhat on a stagnant energy. You know what I'm saying? If you don't have that extra counterpart. Because she's going to bring that feminine energy. She's going to balance you out. Okay, I'm masculine, but what about, this is where you get into yoga, meditation,
feminine practices, yeah.
Feminine practices, anything that's going to be self-affirming to who you are as a person.
Yeah.
That's what she's there for. You know what I'm saying? So,
yeah, as a man, it's a lot harder to tap in spiritually. That's why a lot of men are still stuck in the streets. They got egos. They can't really break out and go inside because they got so much masculine energy, so much ego. They can't really process things internally. They just inside their ego until like maybe a spiritual woman, or until they just tap into the feminine energy themselves. They'll tap into a stronger spiritual foundation. And I heard a reason why a lot of men don't want to tap into their feminine energy is because people are calling it feminine energy. It's just, you feel me? So it's like people just gotta understand, like, just tap into your tap into your insides, tap into your heart, and then you could be balanced out.
They stuck in that word magic.
Yeah.
Word magic, yeah.
Another word.
Yeah.
Yeah,
anything you want to add on, Yvng Gahd?
I mean, basically, I'm listening at this point, and I feel like it's the same. Like, I still feel like it has to, like, going back to that parasitic conversation, it just reminds me of the system that we live in today, really. About how it can seem so convincing to want to join, and you get on in and it just sucks your energy and harvests all your gifts to try to sustain it, and it don't really have no regards to anybody else. And basically, when you join that society and that system, you just gotta roll like that. So you become numb. That goes back to a personal conversation we was having a while ago about somebody being able to be comfortable with a slaughterhouse job or something. Like, when you enter into that job field, you basically gotta numb yourself out. And when you enter into the system, you gotta numb yourself out. So a lot of these rappers and all that, they just numb versions of themselves. They're basically the vampiristic version of themselves. You know what I'm saying? So that's how I see it.
And another thing I want to point out, you see how the divine masculine and the divine feminine came together to kill these vampires. Like, that's why, that's why people say, I don't know if you ever heard this quote, that the woman will protect you in the spiritual realm. I know we had a conversation when I say, like, when a woman's having her period, you will sit with that woman and pray with that woman, meditate with that woman, because that woman is powerful. We're powerful in the spiritual realm. So that's one of the reasons, like, he uses spirit discernment to have, to have a woman that can protect him in the spiritual realm, because regardless, she was always protecting him. Regardless, because he came back from, I think, Chicago. She was always protecting him when he was all the way out in Chicago. So it's like having a spiritual woman, or just a woman that's tapped in, nothing can really defeat you.
Nah, she was a real one from the jump. You could tell she was a real one from the jump.
Yeah.
Like, he went and he opened up a whole new endeavor, opened up that whole new building, but he had to go back and go get the original. You feel me? He had to go get his original woman who he originally had, created a foundation with. He didn't focus on jumping and moving forward to somebody else as fast. So I really respected him for that part. And, he so happened to be with a very powerful woman who was also a resource or something of that nature. So, yeah, I think that was really fire.
Yeah, it was kind of crazy when she died. It's like, that's like having your spiritual protector, someone you love, die. And I was wondering, like, I see why he paused and he just stopped everything what he was doing. He looked over and then he was like, no, like, he lost everything right there. Even though she's still the spiritual realm, that's a lot to lose. Like, losing your goddess, that's, how mentally traumatizing and emotionally traumatizing it is. Even though he was fighting somebody, he was like, nah, like, he went straight to her and was just like, that's everything to him. So that he probably felt like the world just fell when that happened.
Yeah,
you know
I mean,
what I'm saying?
even that other vampire did the the chick who had changed in the beginning, the Caucasian chick. She really felt it once the mother got killed. She really felt it because she was a part of that group, and that told me she was conscious at that moment, and still had emotion. She had feelings, you know what I'm saying? So, because she yelled the loudest, really, she yelled louder than he did as soon as the moment happened. So it was just like, whoa, if you had that much, heart, you could have easily changed your mind and not wanted to go in there and be so savage. But she was bloodthirsty at that point. She couldn't focus on anything but blood, you know what I'm saying? So yeah, it was symbolic, very, very symbolic and deep at that part. I really
Yeah,
enjoyed it.
that was a very interesting aspect
Yeah.
right there. And the movie centers. It was a very one thing I also realized it was very biblical too because Mary, that's the name of Jesus's mother, and it's depicted someone who is bridge between the God world and the physical realm. So it was kind of funny how the movie directors, they made Mary the one to be the first vampire, and they made her go into the house because the vampires, especially the head vampire, he needed a woman who was a bridge, so she could be a bridge between them and the people inside the house. So I found that was like a very biblical kind of Easter egg I seen. And it's like, because like if it was anybody else, it would have been a lot harder. But since they got her, since they got married, this was like a really big bridge, because every names hold power, and your name. If you look up your name, the meaning of your name, it shows a lot of meaning and symbology. So when I seen that, it made a lot of sense. And vampires also die from the sun, which Mary's son, her name is Jesus, in the Bible. So the movie centers is very biblical. You see all the churches is everywhere. So the preacher, the head vampire. You hear the word sin a lot in the Bible, and it's just showing how much biblical Easter eggs they got in here. And I really feel like the reason why the vampires got a lot of people was because they got married first.
One thing a lot of people are missing, the key component in the movie was the spiritual technology of the music, right?
Music, yes.
The spiritual technology of the music, you got to understand that the octave vibrations of cymatic frequencies have a turn-bond kinetic energy that can manipulate the space-time continuum by way of the instrumentation from the instruments. So when he was playing that banjo, the guitar or whatever, he was able to manipulate space and time because you got to understand the power of stringed instruments. In the 16th century in Ireland, the banjo or any type of stringed instrument, it was banned from that time period during the 16th century by Queen Elizabeth, right? I think it was Queen Elizabeth I, because stringed instruments, they have an ethereal energy to it. Anything that contains ether has the ability to manipulate physical matter. So that's why when he was playing the music, it was taking him through the process from different historical events, from hip hop to jazz. It was showing you, African drums and stuff like that. That's what music is. It has the ability to manipulate time and create time dilation.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So
You want to add on to that?
to add on, yeah, I wanted to say, did you see in that one scene when they was all dancing to the blues? Basically, you saw every type of culture in that room dancing. You saw somebody doing the electric slide. You saw people over there doing salsa. People was break dancing. They had so many different cultures in that room at that moment while he was playing that I relate. It showed the barrier that it was able to break between time and space, because there was no way that they was doing dances that they claim to create nowadays back then. Mm-hmm. And there was no way that a lot of them old school dances would have even still existed now. It just showed to me it combined a lot of times. And I'm a musician myself, so I pay attention to the rhythm and the frequencies and how the energy changed when those vampires was outside singing. You can hear the frequency shift. It was like compared to the blues, not just when they were doing, like, I don't know the name and everything, excuse me for that, but they were doing like the Irish dance and everything. That was a complete. What'd you say?
So I'm glad you brought that up. I'm a Yeah.
Oh yeah, most deaf. So you see, it was a complete different frequency from there to when we was on blues and playing blues. It was like live. It was live compared to like a low vibrational frequency, and you can feel it if you tap in on that nature.
Mm.
And then the Ireland aspect of it, you know, you got to get to the inception of Druid culture. The Druids are the Celts, and the Celts are the Canaanite, the same people who are cursed, the blue-eyed beasts. So you got to ask yourself apart, you know, why do you think they wanted Sammy so much, right? They wanted his musical ability. That's because by way of the law of vibration, when you go to the 7 Hermetic principles, they don't have the law of vibration. They don't have the law of rhythm because they're not connected to the planet. They don't have the genetic format to harmonize with the Schumann resonance, right?
Yeah.
Because when the Schumann resonance spikes up, that's going to dematerialize their genetic format. There's a reason why when you look at the word instrument or instrumental, the word mental is in there for a reason.
Mm.
Because vibrations is supposed to enhance those vibrations to activate the crown chakra. Why do you think they call it the organ in the church? These are frequencies.
Yeah.
And when he was at the Mississippi Crossroads, they was in the Delta. The Delta, that's a frequency, right? Because you got to understand that Mississippi is a portal of consciousness. You got to understand that Mississippi and Chicago, the Great Migration period. A lot of people who live in Mississippi, they have a lot of family in Chicago. A lot of people in Chicago, they got a lot of family in Mississippi. Why you think the great majority of the master teachers came from that geographical area? Because some of the oldest people on the planet are the Mississippians. The Mississippian bloodline is connected to the Olmecs, and the Olmecs is connected to the Aztecs and the Incas. When you get to the 5 civilized tribes of the Choctaw, the Wichita, the Yamasee, these are all Moorish people. That's why you got to read this book right here, We Are Not Black. It's going to show you the Olmec connection that's connected to the bloodlines of Mississippi, right?
Yeah.
That's why it's imperative to understand genetics and everything. It's showing you the diametrical difference on 2 different bloodlines. Those Irish people, those are Celts, those are Canaanites, those are the cursed seed, right? But the ones that's indigenous to the land were the Mississippians. That's why they wanted his vibration when it came to the music.
Facts. And they couldn't tap in. They had no ability to tap into his frequency that he was playing, and they knew that. And like that nowadays, like they music can't distract us and can't send us in the wrong direction like our own music can. We use our own stuff to the best of our ability, and that's why we shine the way we do. But when we use it against our own culture, we see the demise that it has from that. We see exactly what happens. I really think it's wild though, because I'm from Chicago myself, and my granddad just told me we got a lot of land in Mississippi that's ours. We just need to go out there and basically clear it out. From like back in slavery time, I guess we have a lot of land that we inherited. And I really think that bridge there is very interesting with the Chicago and Mississippi bridge. I would have never thought it was that connected to the point that Emmett Till was from Chicago, and I never knew that. You know, I was just like, whoa. When I seen that, it just really put my mind in another era. Like I could see why a lot of the culture is the way that it is in Chicago, and why it's a lot of distractions and the murder rate is high and everything. I see exactly why.
See, that's because Chicago is in alignment with the Big Dipper star constellation. It's one of the 7 cities, along with, you know, Cleveland, Pittsburgh, Washington, D.C., Philadelphia, New York City, St. Louis. These are all portals. These are all portals of energy. So that's why they killed Emmett Till, because he was whistling Dixie. Whistles or anything that has an ethereal energy, it exposes everything, right? You got to understand the story, because Europeans didn't get him. It was his own people, right? It was his own people that sold him out to the European. When you get to the story, the real story talking about Emmett Till, but it was some black people that went in there and kidnapped him, and they brought them to the Europeans, and that's when they did what they did to him. So that's showing you, just like on a historical context and in the movie, that they look like us, but they not us.
Yeah,
all skin folk ain't kinfolk, man.
Yeah, I also wanted to include, even with the Guitar Boy, I found it interesting because with the Guitar Boy, it was someone he said at one point that they had said that his music was basically here to draw on the devil. And it kind of was like, a vampire is a devil. So it kind of shows that even in the churches, there's a lot of mediums there. And people think that there's only mediums in the spiritual community, but there's also mediums in the churches too. But they're limited though. The pastors keep them on a lock. So I realize it's like no matter how religious somebody is, they still have spiritual abilities inside them. Everybody has intuition, and there's a lot of prophets. That's why they have the Holy Ghost in the churches. They have all these channeling and all these spirits. These are mediums.
But this is just my opinion. The Holy Ghost in
Yeah.
itself, like, why you got to call it the Holy Ghost? Why can't you call it the Holy Spirit? Why don't you call it the Holy Soul? First of all, you can't be holy until you're using your whole brain. That's what it is to be holy. You become a whole brain thinker. So, a lot of things in the church is actually a form of reverse psychology. It actually subjugates your spiritual gifts. It basically dematerializes your magnetism. It cuts you off on your magic, because when you believe in something outside of yourself, that creates the Maat gene, the vesicular monomind transporter 2 gene. It keeps you confined into something outside of yourself. That's what keeps you away from your higher self.
Yeah, it's not to say, and then, no, I wasn't saying that the Holy Ghost is something that's necessarily real. Bdell was more saying like the fact that that's even in the church. The fact that's even in the church is like it shows that they're still using some type of spiritual system to channel. So it's more so like in the church, people there they still use like prophets, There's still prophets in the church, and they may not, as I say, it may be wrong. Their prophecies may be wrong, but one out of the blue moon, there's going to be some type of prophecy that they can't predict, and it's kind of like they gamble with the prophecies. You know what I'm saying? So
yeah.
And
It's really interesting how many ancient cultures are even in the Christian tradition. Like, I grew up Hebrew ever since I was 7, so I got a chance to learn about a lot of words that were created in the Christian or English language, actually about 6,000 years before English got created. And like to learn that hallelujah is said in church, and that means praise God in Hebrew. Praise Yah, which means Yah will be God's real name. The fact that Messiah is the word and it means messianic, which is a messenger in Hebrew. It really, amen is amen, which means the end all in Hebrew. So it's very interesting to me how a lot of cultures are instilled into the Christian religion. And I believe that's why like every lie has to have a little bit of truth in it to make it understandable or believable. So by them implementing so many different stolen messages, I believe that's what made them so powerful as a group, because a lot of people, they are able to hold on to particular areas that they believe in, and they just can't let that part go, and that make the rest of it look real. That's my opinion on Christianity. I know a lot of people feel differently, but that's how I feel.
Yeah. Hey, anyone want to add on to anything? There's another point. I'm gonna ask you guys all. We got some questions for everybody. So the one thing I want to ask is, there was 2 women in that movie that cheated. You got the Mary, she cheated, and you also got the other woman who was sleeping with the guitar boy. She cheated too. Both had husbands though. Do you feel like there was any meaning to this part?
Nah, just they was all lustful for real. That's how I look at it. Everybody wanted to hump on somebody. I mean, that's basically it. Like that's all I seen. I seen that a lot in the movie. I'm like, damn, here go another one.
Yeah.
That's just how it go in Hollywood. They
Yeah.
gotta warm our
I
brain
did
up.
notice that. I was like, why they put it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then also it was a chick magnet for Michael B. Jordan. He had to get some energy out the screen time. A lot of women went crazy to see that. So
Yeah.
it just that's how I look at it for real.
Right. Yeah. Okay. So let me get to the questions. Anybody want to add anything on before we get to some main questions?
No, I'm good.
Okay. All right. So if you was living in that world, would you been able to spot a vampire acting like a human? So if you was in that movie, would you be able to spot a vampire?
Hell yeah.
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 Okay.
Yeah, because I'm gonna tell you why. Because when you, this is like authenticity is the highest frequency on the planet. Anytime you're not operating from authenticity, that means that you need to feed off somebody else's vibration as a catalyst to compensate for the lack thereof. So if you don't have that it factor that people be talking about, a lot of times, like I said, you're going to try to pull on other people's energy, and that's a parasite because you don't have a do for self mentality. You need external stimulation in order to get where you need to go, instead of getting an internal stimulation. So that's my perspective on that.
Yeah. And I
Okay.
personally feel like I would have knew offhand, because once they started to become like suspect and everybody got suspicious, like you can literally, I don't know, if you had an eye of discernment, even though they was acting, you can see the personality change in their eyes. Basically, they went from regular to like very low vibrational, and I want to say demonic in their eyes, and they way of, and I feel like they had them do that on purpose. You can tell like they were very subliminally trying to act like they weren't on BS, but they was. Like the big
Yeah.
dude was trying to come back in. Man, nah, bro, I don't know what they tripping on, man. Let me back in the door. Man, that had a lot to do with the fact that he tried, basically he was trying to show them, I'm still me, I ain't changed my energy. But if you had the eyes of discernment, and you can hear the tone change, and you was like, nah, bro, just like the Asian dude tried to come back for his girl, you was like, nah, bro, like something don't seem right, bro. Like if dude got back up, his brother got back up and ran back out, I wouldn't even ask no questions. Off rip, I would have just got the busting, because it's like something ain't right, you feel me? Like he lost his consciousness. He got up and came back out with a hole out the side of his neck. You feel me? Like, yeah, you gonna spot that. I mean, it's like if you didn't, you probably belong out there with him. You feel me? Like that's how I see it, for real.
As far as you, Mystic.
I would have. I just know spirit would have said something ain't right. Cause at the end of the day, like you are a spiritual being in a human body. So your intuition, your gut is gonna tell you something is off always.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, so I just want to know, like, nah, like something ain't right. Like you could just, they was soulless in their eyes. Like you can look in their eyes and see they didn't have no soul. The
Yeah,
soul was gone, the spark was gone. So
I
yeah,
don't know how they played that so good. They
right,
did.
they really do.
Yeah.
I'm talking about, you felt it like real life. Like I was like, whoa,
Exactly.
bro. Like it felt like a real person trying to come back and finesse you real quick.
Yeah. What moment in the movie woke y'all up the most?
Mm,
I think
this is,
the musical part, it was just showing you the power of music. Music is a high vibrational technology. So that's
yeah,
what we got to get from the synthetic drums or whatever and start going back into instrumentation. That's what we got to do. We got to start getting back into the instrumentation of the music.
facts. Yeah,
Mhm.
Okay.
that's to me. I
And
know.
they pay attention to like a lot of the older movies. In order to summon entities, in order to summon extraterrestrials, in order to open up portals, they all use instruments. The movie Leave the World Behind, he was using the octave vibrations to open up a portal and to connect with whoever he was trying to connect with. In the movie The Close Encounters of the Third Kind, they was using the keyboard in order to, communicate with extraterrestrials, right? So music is always going to be the catalyst for us to get to the next level.
Yeah,
Mm.
yeah. I want to say I really highly agree with that. The music scene really woke me up the most. Like being able to see all of those different expressions, and then really at the end, seeing the brother that the movie was based on. Was that a real story? Dude had scratches on his face and everything. So I'm like, where did that part come from? That part really like opened up my curiosity to another
I know
level.
where that came from. It came from the aspect of Robert Johnson and the Mississippi Crossroads.
Mm.
Because Robert Johnson, they said he sold his soul at the crossroads of Mississippi when really he got his guitar playing abilities from Papa Leba when he met him at the crossroads.
Yeah.
And then that's when he had intrinsic musical abilities and he ended up being a big star and stuff. So at the end of the movie, that translates to that from a folklore standpoint.
Yeah. So I do got a question. I know it's a little well, it's on topic. What does the crossroads mean to you? Because I've heard that in several different conversations and songs and things. But what does it mean to you?
Well, the crossroads in itself, Bobby Hemmett, he once said, if you want to do a money ritual, he said you put 4 pennies all around those crossroads in that area to where you're able to materialize on whatever you're trying to manifest or whatever. But there's always a price that comes with that. There's always a price that comes with it. But the crossroads in itself, when you get into mind science technology, the crossroads represents the cephaloid bone, which is the seat where the Ark of the Covenant is at. That's connected to the pituitary gland and the hypothalamus gland. So that's the crossroads. I told you, you got 4 different chambers in the brain, but you can't be holy until you become a whole brain thinker. Why you thinking when you graduate college, you got to move the tassel to the other side because you're raising up at a degree?
Absolutely.
Raising up in the form of consciousness. So as far as like the crossroads, when you get into when Jesus was crucified, he was crucified on Mount Calvary. Mount Calvary was Golgotha, which is the place of the skull. And the place of the skull was basically the crossroads for him to resurrect himself. So it's not a coincidence that the movie Sinners came out during the time period of after Easter or before Easter.
Yeah.
That's not a coincidence.
Yeah.
It's talking about resurrection.
Right. And so like the crossroads, there's a cross, remind you of the crossroads, just the reference, like the cross and the, because I noticed 3 crosses right over their head in the church when they first walked in the door. And the first thing I thought about was 33, like the age that Jesus was when he was crucified, and like the 33rd vertebrae, just different things. I saw that. I saw the Trinity. I saw a lot of different things seeing that initial scene. Does that you think that had anything to do with like the crossroad? And I'm asking that for like a broad question for everybody too. Do you think that has anything to do with like the crossroads?
Yeah, I think it has something to do with the crossroads. Because like I said, in order to get to the other side, you got to master your root chakra in order to get to the apex of Christ consciousness by way of the activation of the crown chakra. So you can't be, your chakra system can't be out of balance as far as like the root chakra. You have to obtain that sexual energy. That's why they tell you in the Hermetic principles, you can't overspill your cup of Hermes. You got to keep it full. And you got to keep it full. You got to use that cosmic oil. That's why, like I said, the brother that was wearing the red, he was stuck on a certain energy. He wasn't able to resurrect himself because he had no spiritual discernment. Right? He wasn't tapped in like how his brother was.
Yeah.
Why he wasn't able to live on. But he lived on as far as like, but he had to sell his soul for that.
Yeah.
He became a vampire.
Yeah, if he was conscious, he definitely would have been aware of the fact that he shouldn't have made that decision to lay down with the lady who was obviously married. So like, yeah, that messed him up all the way. First, like, I don't know. I already look at anybody weird who can't go out in the sun and you feel me, just have a normal day in nature. Like, there's some close family members of I don't want to do too much because the internet is something else, but there's someone in my close family through marriage and stuff who they can't even go outside and like touch like the plants or anything like that. I just feel like that's very weird. They don't like the sun, the grass, nothing. So I'm like, this movie just really reminded me to really stay clear of anybody like that. You feel me? Like, I'm just like, you might come and try to bite my neck. I don't want it. You feel me? I don't want it. Like, yeah. So
or they just might, use entities that's connected to them by way of energy transfer to where they're able to attach themselves to your energetic morphic field by way of the nervous system. So their demons become yours. So you definitely gotta stay away from people like that.
Yeah.
And I wanted to add, you see how Preacher Boy, when they trapped the red hat dude in the closet, and he was trying to convince him, like, "Oh, I'm your cousin. We family. Let me out." Like that's just like your the vampires can infect your family members to convert you or get your talents, because Preacher Boy, for me, he has spiritual inheritance, and that's what they wanted. They wanted the spiritual inheritance. So they even got his cousin. They converted his
Yeah.
cousin to try to get close to him. And that's why you gotta watch your, like you
You
said,
watch your family.
right?
Yeah,
Cause
yeah. I
like,
wrote that in my notes.
yeah,
I
like
wrote
you
that in
gotta
my notes
watch.
too. I was
That's
saying
the
that
thing.
too. Like the family, there's a lot of ties into the family. Like the head vampire, he used a lot of the family members because to influence people's emotions. Because your family ties to your emotions. So he didn't use anybody. But this is symbolic to how your family influences you to come back to the matrix. They basically were trying to get you back to the matrix, but they use your
Right.
family. It's symbolic to how in reality our family, everybody has a sleep family member. And then you're gonna have times where they're gonna be like, "Oh, why don't you come back to church? Why don't you do this? Why don't you?" That's
Yeah.
symbolic to what's happening in the movies when they're using the brother, when they're using the Chinese woman, her man. They're using family members. So it's like this is probably the most symbolic spiritual movie this whole year.
On
Yeah,
top
it's just about
it's showing you the reincarnation aspect too.
yeah.
Because that's why they say don't go into the light, because the light is a false light. And they use holograms on the dark side of the moon as far as like family members, and let's just say a woman had an abortion and she see her child. They use stuff like that connected to the simulation to pull you right back into the material plane for reincarnation purposes. So that's why I said you have to understand that the dualistic energies of everything that we live in our reality is an illusion. You got to follow the path of the middle way. That was the true aspect of the movie. That was like the message, to not get caught up in dualism. Because when you get caught up in dualism, you coming right back here. You got an emotional connection to food. You got an emotional connection to sex. You got an emotional connection to low vibrational ass family members that's going to bring you right back here. Right?
Yeah.
You got an emotional connection to the religion. So it's one of those things where you got to separate yourself in order to get to the next level. That is going to be your interstellar vortex portal to the higher dimensions, following the path of the middle way. Because when you go through the wrong door, your ass is food for the gods, and you're going to come right back here.
Right. Yeah. Quick question, right? Does that remind you of that? Like, is that like a spinoff to you of that movie Leave the World Behind? Like, it was basically telling you to leave the world behind, right? And then why at the end of the movie, I didn't see the whole movie, them in the kitchen chopping up no fresh plants and stuff that looked like it was fresh out the garden. But during that flashback, before he went and had all them Caucasian people come and line up like they was finna come rebuy the place, like none of that never happened. And he went and sprayed all them down with AKs and everything, and took that bullet wound to the torso. Basically when he had that flashback, they went back to even showing them in the kitchen cutting fresh lettuce and everything. They showed them holding the baby. They showed them looking at the space and building it from scratch. They showed the entire flashback that to me reminded me of anything that we always try to create outside of this system. Like when we creating our own food, we chopping our own stuff, but we got the queens, the goddesses in the kitchen cooking. The kings is creating the plan and building it, and the women is decorating. Everything was aligned on how they built that entire structure, just for it to all get destroyed by a certain person hating and coming with a different mindset. I felt like that had a lot of symbolism way beyond just like the movie and the bar. That bar symbolized the entire.
I agree with you. That's just telling you that you can't bring everybody ass to the barbecue.
Yeah.
Start letting them come to the barbecue. That's the problem. They do the Harlem Shake or whatever, and you think they cool, and you let them in, and the next thing they stealing your food. They taking your gold. They taking the babies, and the next thing you know, your whole village is burned down because you let him in. That's what the white woman. She symbolized that. She led, you know what I'm saying? He had a veneration for the white woman. You see what Shannon Sharp is going through, right?
Yeah.
Same thing taking place.
Yeah, with the
Just
white woman, Mary, you also noticed that I did the etymology on her. Mary means bitter. So, she was depicted as a very bitter woman in the
yeah.
beginning. She was kind of bitter that he was still not, I guess he moved on or something like that. And I
Yeah.
don't know what he had with her. I guess he had an intimate connection with her, but I don't know. They say he loved her, and he left her, but it shows that, when someone from the past comes back, you got to understand it's like, it's a very tricky situation.
But
So,
then it was like him trying to cut off Babylon in a sense. He was trying to cut off Babylon. Basically, by him trying to cut her off, he was trying to cut his ties with the Caucasian connection that was inside of their fortress. And she wasn't having that nor understanding why. And she didn't understand why he said, I will kill for you, but I don't want to be with you ever again. Basically, that's him trying to divorce the Matrix right there. He trying to get out of the system. But she didn't understand that. She turned around. She tried to understand those vampires as being some positive people who look like her, who was just misunderstood. And she brought them right back in. She brought their energy in. If they would have just kept them on the outside, they would have stayed out there. But it's because she went out there and brought it back into the culture. And that goes a lot. That's like the story of Samson. That goes into the story of a lot of people, of how the whole entire fortress was brought down by us trying to trust them and them being deceptive, by they're sending their, whether it's women or men, in our camps, and us allowing to just let it in. You feel me? And just roll with the flow. Like when they came, they didn't have no positive intentions. They came ready to burn the entire place down. So that's what happened. And one more thing, I feel like that Asian lady, she signified being up. She was very upset at the end. She was very upset, and they was trying to tell her, "Yo, nah, calm down, right?" She started to spaz out, like, "Nah, forget it. Come right now, right now." And then what happened? The guy who was the leader, he looked surprised, like, "Oh man, there we go. The moment we was waiting for. They was waiting for that aggression, for the energy to lower, the frequency to lower in that building, so that they can just push the doors wide open." What happened that let them come in when they couldn't come in the first time? They weren't allowed in. The frequency changed, and by her coming and starting off, and who was the one burnt down the entire building? It was the Asian lady. She lit the bottle on fire, and she threw it thinking it was going to just burn them all up, and it didn't work. They smacked it to the side and burnt the entire thing down.
See, that's
So
me and 19 Keys, we touched in on that the other night when we did the video. He said verbatim that we were supposed to put her down. You're supposed to put her down, like, you know what I'm saying? It's like I said, it's one of those things where we have to deviate from the emotions and start operating from a place of rationality. She was supposed to have been put down, I don't know, knock her out or unalive her, but she was supposed to be put down because you finna compromise everybody.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? She was supposed to be put down. So that's how we supposed to, that's how we was able to have autonomous kingdoms in the inception of time, when we had like ancient Kemet during the beginning dynasties or whatever. Anything, if you felt like an agent and we even thought about it, you know what I'm saying? You had to, we was deviating from you.
Yeah.
We had to put you down, or you're gonna get exiled from the country.
Yeah.
So
But
anybody,
see, like,
yeah, you go ahead.
no, I just got a question. But see, like, do the Asian community really rock with us? Is what I was really feeling too watching that movie. They're instilled into our societies. Of course, everything made in Asia, Korea, and all that. We got Chinese restaurants there because the white people won't allow them in their civilization because they look too much alike. They've been had beef with America before, but they're in our society, right? And during that movie, why were they saying, let's dip? Because we just came to help with the Black People Party. We came to help with the celebration. We wasn't here to go through the turmoils of them. So go get the car, babe, and we about to leave. And basically, he left to go get that car, and she was waiting on him. So they never was rocking with the movement. They was getting ready to dip. They was about to dip a long time ago. So that goes to show, it's some stuff going on in the hood where the Chinese restaurant is at. Who gonna be the first place to board up their windows and everything? Like, just like we wasn't a part of it. We was here for the black dollars, but not for the black struggle. I really just wonder that. You know what I'm saying? Like, I saw that in that movie as well.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Yeah, so Sinners was labeled as a horror movie. Do you guys feel like this was a real horror movie in Hollywood, or you kind of feel like it wasn't all that scary? Because, you know, even my mom, she
It
was
was.
going to see it, and she was like, nah, it's too scary. Some people feel like it's too scary. You know what I'm saying? I know some people, I know they had it with crystals and they was watching it, they felt like it was just, but then some people are like, nah, this is nothing. This is just the truth.
I think they should change the category. I think they should they might have classified it as horror, but it was really just suspense. It was suspense.
Thriller,
That's
yeah.
what it was like edge of your seat suspense. It made you want to know what was gonna happen next. Like, you was like, oh shit, the side of his face just got ate off, whatever. But at the same time, that wasn't scary. Like, it wasn't, to me, I don't know, it take me a while to get scared anyways. Like, if you put on one of them real life ghost movies,
Insidious,
huh?
like Insidious.
Yeah, like something like Insidious. I'm like, oh man, it's some real life. I don't even like playing with that because I understand. I'm Haitian. I know how it goes in that community. So I'm like, bro, I don't even want to watch things where they chanting in Latin and all that. I stay away from that. But as far as that, that's scary. You feel me? Jeepers
Yeah.
Creepers back in the day was scary, but right now, that's suspense, man. I feel like that's action. That was an action movie.
Okay, what about
And
you?
Mixed in with a little culture, mixed in with a little back in the day culture.
Oh, okay. How about you, Mystic?
I feel that they put it as a horror movie so people can go watch it. Because they say it's a horror movie, and then look at the character that, they had, that main character. They want people to see this movie for some reason. So either it's gonna either go over your head, or you're gonna grasp it and see the symbolism in the movie. But they want us to see it. So that's why they put it as a horror, because they know people like horror movies.
They do. They
Mm-hmm.
definitely do.
Yeah,
Yeah, as far as you be there.
Well, yeah, the perception of art imitates reality. And you also cannot negate that the CIA has an office in Hollywood and Hollywood has an office in the CIA. So everything that they're showing you is according to the timeline of the documents that they're basically hiding from the public. So there's a lot of truth inside the movies. That's why they operate under the threefold law to balance out their karma. So that's why the people like, well, when the Europeans they're going to get their karma, when all these people that colonize the land, when they're going to get their karma.
right.
I mean, they do have karma as far as like, when you get into spirituality because they don't have ascension rights. But as far as the material world, they don't have any karma because they're showing you. But people, they look at it in the form of entertainment. You know what I'm saying? Like, they've been giving us the truth the whole time. It's in the movies, it's in the books,
Yeah,
it's in everything. But people are captivated by the entertainment aspect of it.
yeah.
Yeah,
And I
some
want
people
to,
find it funny.
Huh?
Some people find it funny, the parts where people getting the arms ripped off. It's always when people find that stuff funny, especially you remember what's his name, Biscuit or Muffin, when he was outside, he's taking a piss, and then he
Oh,
that part was so funny. And they done took him, and I was like, oh man, the guy who was covering the door, he was probably the funniest part of the movie because he had like this personality that was just so cool, chill, laid back, but he was kind of stubborn at the same time. So I felt like he was just a funny person.
yeah.
Yeah.
He naturally a comedian. I watch him in a lot of different movies. He naturally funny. He been around for a while too.
Yeah.
But I did want to add in. I want to say we got some out of all these movies that we be watching, from Get Out to like Leave the World Behind to this one. They all relate and they all seem to correlate a lot of the time frames together, which makes a lot of sense if we weren't really around for as many years that they say that we was, and if the time frame really got messed up. A lot of these stories coexist. Like, one movie has slavery being on one side of the woods and being a wood type of situation, and once you made it out of the woods, then that's when Jim Crow was right on the other side of the woods. And it just makes me wonder, like, right now vampires are being correlated with the Jim Crow time and back. It's just like, what? So were all of these, because we all know vampires were a real thing, it obviously it still is real. So it's like, are we correlating all of these things to the same time frame? Like basically, in my mind now, I'm wired to feel like slavery existed the same time as Martin Luther King and Rosa Parks and them. It's just one group was in the woods and had no idea about a free civilization being on the other side of the woods. And then you had a group in the woods that was outside of the woods that had no knowledge about the people on the inside of the woods. Like when they rode past the plantation and that guy was like, "Oh, do you know them personally?" He was like, I used to work with them." Basically, he was over on the side where blacks was free, which we all know that happened up north. But then they were back still minding the field. So it's just like, and they had on black and white stripe like they was prisoners. So it really correlated a lot of time frames together. Like I don't believe they were all gapped by years and years and years. I really believe everything was correlated together. I really do. Deep down, I feel like slavery could have only happened during the time of civil rights because we were at a point of our mind of trying to integrate into a society that was outside of the woods, which we
Mm.
call America. And I don't know if I got too deep on that, but yeah, that's really how
You
I
good?
feel. That's how I feel. Watching
Okay.
all these movies correlate like that.
Yeah, I definitely feel like, when I was in this movie theater, it was moments to where it's very thrilling. Like if I go on Netflix, there's a lot of thrilling moments where I'm like, okay, boom. There's a lot of moments in that movie where it did give me like, oh crap. Like when I seen the first head vampire, and he had killed the first white dude when he had entered the house. I was like, what the heck? I thought he was a warlock or something. I was like, how did he even kill him? Because when I went in the movie, I didn't know it was a vampire movie. So I'm thinking like he did some magic on her husband, and he just was a magician or something because he was playing the guitar too. So since he was playing music, the whole time I thought he was a magician in the beginning of the movie. I thought he was a magician, and maybe a vampire is a form of a magician because it was like wondering why he was playing music so much. Maybe he was trying to blend in. But it definitely didn't feel like a horror movie. I do know that a lot of people find horror movies comedic, and they find like these movies to be. People feel like when they get their adrenaline pump, that's what gives them their laugh. You know what I'm saying? When someone dies, you know what I'm saying. So a lot of moments in the movie that was it gets your blood pumping, but you can consider it funny. You know. So if you guys could, this will be the last question we got, and we're gonna want to wrap it up. If you could rewrite this movie's climax, would you? And if you would, how would you rewrite it? So the part where the Zon, they got the first few empires, and would you guys rewrite that? And if you would, how would you rewrite it?
Wait, could you ask that again? You said the part what now?
The part where the head vampire, he had just got that woman, and then the woman, she was in there, Mary, the white chick, and then she was about to, she actually ate him. What would you do from there on? Would you create more vampires to come in, or you would kind of just make it like those vampires? How would you rewrite it?
I
And
mean,
would you
to
rewrite
me,
it?
that was like the smoothest way to add it into that scene. If you ask me, it wasn't over the top. It was very smooth like butter. How he was able to go in. One person was able to infiltrate another person, and then show like that. Basically, I mean, if you was to think about it like a plot or something, that was a good plot that a evil genius would think about or something like that, and be like, yeah, I'm gonna just start out with one of them and put them in there and have them just disease everybody. So yeah, I mean that was pretty cool for that mindset. Yeah.
Okay.
What I would have did was I would have extended the ending. I would have shown in the ending when the guy he transmuted into a vampire, and when Sammy was older. What I would have did was I would have showed how the people who was running the world. Because if you notice during that time period, he came in with a Coogee sweater, right? So that was during the time of the apex of Tupac and Biggie and hip hop. So that was also during the time period when hip hop was infiltrated, because before that in the 80s, that's when everybody was conscious, right? Then that's when they got infiltrated with the gangster rap or whatever. Then I would have just showed at the end on how you have bloodsuckers, the vampires who run the music industry. That's what I
Yeah.
would have showed at the end.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. As far as you, Mystic.
I would have like, I don't know. I would have made Preacher Boy more aware, and I would have wanted him to like do more with his music. So maybe like a certain vibration can repel instead of attract these parasites. So I would have made it that he like his ancestors came back to help him. Like
Mm.
he played like a vibration or something, and his ancestors came back to help defeat the vampires. That's what I would have did.
That would have been dope. That
Yeah,
would have been dope right there. That would have
yeah,
been dope. And like show that big magical musical ending right there.
Right, exactly. Yeah, cause yeah.
yeah. I would have made it so where not everyone. I know like nearly everybody became a vampire, but at least it would have been a little bit more competitive when they had their final battle. Especially Mary. I wish she wasn't the first one who became a vampire. If she was like the last one, we would have learned a lot more about Mary and her personality, and that would have been, I feel like, a better. Especially if we would have seen, with the Red Brother, Smoke, no, Stack. If we would have seen the Red Brother Stack stay alive a little longer and then fight at the end with the two brothers. That's what I wanted to see. That's how I would have rewrote it. And then at the end, if they got the brothers, they could fight the KKK members at the end when he got the revenge. That would have been a lot better. But they definitely the movie made sense the way it did happen.
But they
And
should have at least let her be able to use some magic to bring him back or something. Like she was a whole magician for what reason? Just to tell him how to get vampires with wooden stakes and silver bullets. She told them the same thing that they knew. Use some holy water. Like you ain't tell them, oh, this basil right here and the little sage, let's sage them up out of here. I feel like they could have got a little more spiritual with her. You feel me? Like
Oh, you
they
feel like
got
you feel like she
Hollywood
should
with
have.
her.
Oh, you feel like she should have brought back Stack, the Red Brother.
Yeah, she should have brought him back at least. You feel me? Like and showed the ability that could happen based off of her being so tied in magically. Like right now, it seemed like she just was tied in basically just to tell him, yeah, they vampires and you can use holy water. And she was standing there orchestrating them on how to build the weapons, but I didn't hear anything like that was like spiritual or any science that we don't know about or anything like that. You feel me?
and maybe they was too far gone for them to be brought back. Like
Yeah,
it's
yeah. I think he was too dumb. I think he was dead. Like he
What
said,
what
it was
about
out.
what about what about then when they thought he was dead? What if they could have did something then? Like in Black, what's that called? What's that movie called? Oh man, when they brought him back from the dead but with superpowers. You had just posted a video about it. It was the one where they had Nightshade and
Oh yeah. When he was in, well, I see what you're saying. But even in that one, he wasn't completely dead yet. He was kind of like he was just in pain. But I
yeah,
mean, like, if they would have, she scratched his whole neck. So
yeah,
this dude was basically like on like minutes left, probably like 30 seconds left.
yeah.
Maybe, yeah, maybe she scratched his stomach. I think the hoodoo lady could have brought him back to life or did something to uh, keep his spirit. Maybe could contact a spirit to prevent him from going to the underworld and tell the spirit to keep him alive longer. But yeah, but I definitely see the benefit of if the hoodoo lady could have done that. So you would have rewrote it to where she could have brought him back and he would have stayed alive longer.
Yeah, because it's
Yeah.
really symbolic because I just learned not too long ago that brain death is actually created. Like technically brain death doesn't exist. Like you can lose a lot of different parts, but when they actually say you dead, they create that. You technically can be brought back at a lot of different states. Probably not with your neck ate out like that, but I learned here there's a lot of ways to bring consciousness back, and they kind of created what brain death is. And when they say, yeah, he's gone, you know what I'm saying? Like that's a whole nother story in itself. But I'm
Oh,
just finding
yeah, I gotta
this
learn
out.
about that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
bro. It's
I
a
have
whole what you
and
say?
website people who come out to life. It's called like I forgot what it's called, but they People have near-death experiences. NDE.com. It's called near-death experiences. People come back, they die, come back to life, but they die for like 1 minute or 2 minutes, and they come back to life.
Yeah, yeah. I know somebody who died 3 times on the table giving birth, and they still here. I'm
Wow.
like, yeah. I mean, because the consciousness is still there and the body is still here. I feel like that has a lot to do with like reincarnation and mummifying. We used to mummify people because they came back, but when we started to embalm them and drain all their fluids, and basically we made no chance for them to come back to the body. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Not we, but they did. You know what I'm saying? So it just kind of, I don't know, that's like I said, that's another topic, but I really would have made it similar, have some symbolism to have something to do with that. Because a lot of ancient mummy or Egyptians who did the mummifying process were actually magicians and practiced magic and hoodoo and things like that.
Okay, you want to say something, Mystic?
I was gonna say the reason why they had to get married, because if you look at like how they infiltrated our community, they had to grab the woman's mind. You grab the woman's mind, which we have to nurture, and we are part of the protecting. But when you grab our mind, everything falls apart. Like everything falls because the woman is not on board. So if she was a little bit, and she had a drop of blood, she had our blood in her. So I feel like if she was like a little bit more conscious and wasn't in her root chakra, I feel like she probably would have like said, nah, these people aren't good, But they had to get the woman in there to get captured first, so the whole empire goes down. Because when the woman is captured, ain't nothing gonna be right, So
Yeah,
yeah.
that make a lot of sense. That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, that's powerful. Okay, so anything you guys want to add before we go ahead and wrap it up?
I think we cover the vast majority of all pillars of knowledge
Yes.
to the movie.
I will just say this again, for beginners in spirituality, you will start to notice how every movie in the Hollywood industry has subliminal meanings to not only shed light on things about you, but to also shed light on things taboo. All right, that's very important. All these spiritual movies got meanings. It's like a whole puzzle in your face. You know what I'm saying? It's like they giving you a book and be like, hey, learn. But you got to be the one to put on the glasses, get the pen out, and actually point out, highlight what you want to take out. So that's why it's like having these roundtables. I'm really grateful for all you guys for coming on here. You know what I'm saying? You guys all have personal channels, so everybody make sure y'all check everyone out. Bdell, Mystic, and Yvng Gahd.
Yeah, you can follow me at Bdell1014, Bdell1014, and you can follow me on Instagram at Bdell1014 and Bridal Rice Bay on Facebook.
Okay.
I just joined back in. Hey, I'm Yvng Gahd on all platforms. YVNGGAHD. I'm a musician, also a crystal specialist. So definitely hit me up, man. We can chop it up.
I am Maat Mystic. You can follow me everywhere at MAATMYSTIC. I am a soap maker. You can follow my company at Golden Roots Alchemy. I make handmade soaps, handmade butters. I'm good with making things with my hand. And this can be off, but I appreciate all y'all. I learned so much. Like I had my spiritual discernment and was breaking it down, but like listening to all y'all, like y'all really fed my mind, and I give thanks. Thank y'all.
Likewise, Queen, for sure. Definitely. I learned a lot from your perspective too, for sure.
Yes.
I appreciate you.
I'm gonna watch it again, just based off the strength of all that we were saying, and just get some more insight.
Right.
Yes. All
Yeah.
right. Shay family, make sure you guys like, comment, subscribe for more. See y'all next time.
Peace.
Peace out.